right? So it's a great opening. Strauss really knew how to start his pieces. Right? Right, here we're coming in for the third one. Right, this is excerpt number 1. Careful of these subdivisions when you start to go to pits here. Bum, 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 right? It's super easy to miss this, right? And you'll get right? Totally not okay, right? They'll stop the whole orchestra and tell you it's no good, right? Look at that pickup on B4. It's the only thing in the measure that's not a triplet, right? Something I like is you can open D, 4 on F sharp. That'll give you, right? Get up to the B on the A string and you're good to go. Yep. Bum, 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 beam. Bum, bum, bum. Super, super, super exposed. It's going to sneak up. It gets somebody every single time. It's like that part in Mahler 2 where some cellist is always going to go instead of. They're always going to get those pickups wrong because they don't study the excerpts all the time, right? Someone always misses it, and it's different in the recap. There's someone who always biffs that pickup every single time in rehearsal, right? This is one of those spots that's out to get you with that rhythm, right? This also has like maybe one of the best bass entrances ever. Let me try to find it. Yeah, we're somewhere in this Debussy section. Ryan dropped her low D flat tempo. Right, this isn't an excerpt, but it's the best thing ever. Right here, coming out of an A flat. If you ever get to sit fourth bass, that moment is not to be missed. It's truly great. Anyway. It's not an excerpt, just something you should be aware of because it's one of the greatest things that's ever been written. It's just an unbelievable moment. We're now moving on through this stuff into the black page, right? First Zeitmaß, which I forget exactly what that translates to. First tempo, primo tempo. So we're going back to tempo 1, bum, 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 right? And now we're coming up to this spot which is going to catch everyone all the time just because of the rhythm, right? Coming up on it, more or less. advanced stuff, sorry. Yeah, here we come. Da. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Don't give it a try yet. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3. 1, 2, 3. Gotta hold this bow. I would say 2 here. It's hard to hear, it's hard to get it right. This is the basic setup for what this whole section's gonna be. It actually is less complicated than you think it's gonna be. The key is breaking down the subdivision. Think of this in 4, even though, think of it almost the whole time like it's in when it goes into 4 and we go to C minor here. Think of it, try to think of it this way the whole time, right? So, whoa, that's really cool. So here's our normal rhythm, right? Da 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 dum 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 da da, right? It's crazy to look at, and it's got a triplet inside another triplet inside of triplet half note that changes to the right. It's nonsense. But break it down, simplify this into triplets, so you get ba 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 bum ba bum. There's no problem there. Then just get used to turning da 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 da. Turn this into its own bar of maybe 3/8, or in this case 3/16. But I like to just reduce the rhythms down. If you can get rid of a bar and turn a 32nd into a 16th, no harm done, right? So turn this ba da 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 da. Now you've got half the bar taken care of because you simplified the black part down into just a triplet. No problem, right? It's hard, and it's a fingering challenge every single time, and they're all different. But once you simplify this rhythm down, it makes it a lot easier to count, because then you'll have ba 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 bum ba bum, right? Now issue 2 is changing subdivisions from these triplets to 16ths, or in this case 30 seconds, right? So you're going to go ba 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 to give you da 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 da, right? The beat stays the same. Everything is very hammered onto the beat, and it works quite well. If you put your metronome in 4, I guess this would be to the 8th note, right? So all of this is an 8th note, that's an 8th note, that's an 8th note, and that's an 8th note. We're set up. And the basic pattern just continues through the whole excerpt. The other thing to keep in mind, flip back to the bottom of page 1, and the very first urge. Some of these are supposed to be, yeah, the urge. This is what people who analyze this piece think of it as like the urge to life, right? Also Sprach Zarathustra. It has a very, very specific story. He stole it from Nietzsche, and it's about sort of the dawning of man coming out from being a lower life form and finding intelligence and finding cultivation, right? So this feeling, it's supposed to be representative of that urge for life and for thought and for higher being, right? It's for striving for something greater every time. Right, that dotted theme is very heroic in most romantic music, especially German music. When you see dotted stuff, you usually think heroic, right? The nice thing is, these ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right, is outlining usually major minor triads. So the framework of this is pretty simple, right? So look at this first one. We have C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, and then B, G double sharp, A sharp, right? Look at the very first note, C sharp, the middle note of the triplet, and then the first note of the beat in front. Right? So you get C sharp, F sharp, A sharp. It's really just a first inversion triad that's dressed up. Same thing in the next one, top of the second page. First note you have C, the middle note of the fastest triplet, F natural, and then it gives you, right? You have F, A, C, F major, right? The next one in, you have F, B flat, and then E flat, C, D, right? B flat minor, right? The next one, you get E major, B, E, and then what is that? A, da, 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 right? E, G sharp, B, E major. Every one of these motions will have a major or minor triad that's shown in that way. That's pushing you all the way forward into the next beat, right? Same thing for the dotted rhythms, right? B flat, F sharp, A. What's that? Simple, we got diminished, right? No problem. E, G sharp, B. Very triadic again, right? At the one in the second line. Right, we've got triads again. The one at the end of the second line, B flat, no problem, right? So all of these building blocks are just messed up and made more complicated by this running line, but it's showing you really, really traditional harmony in that way. Strauss's favorite composer was Mozart, right? So this is best thought of as crazy, late romantic Mozart, in a way. Right? So it has to keep its line, and the tonality has to stay. Something good to keep in mind, there's a lot of good, if you can keep these things on da-da-dum, ba-da-da, if you can enclose these last of the triplet and this in one hand position, that works great. Like at the top of page 2, and then ba-da-dum. I like to keep this on the D string. That gives you, right? There's a lot to be said for trying to go up the D string for a lot of these, because when you get to the top, look at this. Does the first one go up high? What is it? F sharp major, or F sharp minor, sorry. Right? You can make that hand position up in thumb position pretty easily. 1, thumb, 3. Right? The second one comes in, you've got diminished motion. So if you can get E flat, F sharp, A, right? Da da da. Right? The third one is low, doesn't really count. The first one in line 2, E, G sharp, B. Right? Same idea. You don't need it for the next one. You can do D minor, right? You don't really need it for the next guy. Yeah, but that's a really robust idea that can let you keep using very similar patterns, because once you've got, let's look at this one on the top of the second page, right? B flat, G sharp, A, We've got all that in one hand position, no problem. Shift up the D string. That's a very solvable problem, right? Did you see that too? A squirrel just, yeah, there he is again. Sorry, a squirrel just ran and looked like he was coming in the air duct for a second. My bad, sorry.
Looks like Strauss.
So. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Gotta find a way to hold these notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one you're allowed two goes. 2, 2, 3, 4. That's one of the harder things about this excerpt is really sustaining those long notes, super long in forte, right? In a lot of ways, the faster you go through this excerpt, the easier it becomes for that reason, because these long notes really hold back the tone, and they're really going to clog up if they don't have enough room to breathe. So, right. 2, 3, 4. Right, very doable in that way. I would sort of work backwards from be-da-dum-bum-bum, right, the last. I would work backwards from starting from here. Dee-da-dum-bum-bum, because usually from these two notes out, the run will more or less be pretty evident of how it wants you to go. And I like to work backwards from there, right? So look where you're going to end up. So like at the top of the page, I probably want to get to B flat with 4 on the D string, right? That's very solvable. It's not too fast. It's not too notey, right? So knowing that, I'm going to work my strategy back for these 5 notes before. That's an option too, right? Coming up the A string that way. Right? Work backwards from the part that you know how you want it to go, right? Be-da-dum-bum-bum-bum is an easy problem to solve. And then just find out where you want to end up and get there from there, right? That's my big sort of takeaway for this. It's a very similar pattern, each one of these. Once you get used to breaking that down, breaking the nasty part just down into triplets, and then changing subdivisions from 16th note triplets to straight up, I guess they're 30 seconds. I figured it out at some point. I think they're 30 seconds, right? But so you can really nail that dotted rhythm. Right? Really have an intact fourth beat where you change subdivisions. It's really important for getting the sort of character of this. The only other thing, right when we go into C minor, right? If you don't have an extension, this is a great place to take the whole thing up. It works quite well. 4, 4, 1, and then you're in first position. Or honestly, this doesn't sound good at all on bass because it's just too fast. So even on my bass, I go and just drop. I think it works better. The cellos are playing it in that octave, no all notes. It's so fast, and you want those notes to be clear. Right? It's just going to sit down there, right? Good. When you play this, it's not part of our excerpt, but when you play this, look at that thing you have right at the beginning of number 6. Right? This. That motif is supposed to mean disgust, right? So let's look what we have. Tritone down, chromatic, minor 6, right? Everything about that is gross, and it works great. You're doubling, I think, bass trombone and a bunch of other nasty instruments that are just gonna really good moment to keep track of if you're prepping this for orchestra. It comes up once or twice.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, that'll do. Dee da 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 dee da, right? Really nice thing to keep track of for when we get into the bullets, right? Now you have. Let's go on to the next page. For me, it's page 24. I think it's page 3 of this in total, right? After rehearsal 9, right? You've had mutes on this whole time. Mutes go away, and now let's all. Don't try to play along because we'll miss the subdivisions. Let me crank this up as high as it goes. Let me find it first. Yep. As usual, you can't hear anything. Yeah, we're all going to have to sort of come just a little closer, but. This is a 12-tone fugue for 4 double basses. Let me back it up again. Everyone, come a little. Let me see if I can turn this off for 1 minute. All right. So starting right at the double bar, 4th stand of basses is the first to play. So this really does come all the way from the very darkest corner of the concert hall, right? Here it is at the beginning. Right? You're gonna have to find a spot to listen on your own and just sort of put on a nice pair of headphones and see what you can do.
Classic trying to record a voice.
Yeah, it really is. It's really rare to find a recording where that sounds good. When it's live, it's really cool. The real complication here is in subdivisions, right? This is the only way I know how to subdivide this in such a way that you can play the rhythms accurately. So, let's break this down because we're talking about bars 3 and 4 of that first statement, right? So you have bars 1 and 2. Da, 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 1, 2, da, 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 right? The way that you subdivide this is to go into triplet eighth notes, right? So each triplet quarter is 2 triplet eighths, right? Each triplet half note is 4 triplet eighths, right? That way you can keep this subdivision going. Da 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 1 2 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 bum, and then we switch back to straight eighth notes. Does that make sense? That's how I was taught. Subdividing these into eighth note triplets, no problem. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun, and I can't do the clicks underneath it because I'm not that smart. But
which line of this are you learning? Like all of them, or?
Well, Brian, if we do this as a class, we'll have to talk about that. Brian will have to be on the 4th part because the whole thing's on the extension. The other parts don't require extension at all. So we'll be okay. Brian, the bottom line is the most difficult. So why don't you learn the bottom line and don't worry about the others, because once you learn the bottom and you can subdivide, really 90% of your game is over. So let's do that. And for everyone else, let's say Savannah, why don't you take the top line, concentrate most on the top line, and you'll play that for your video next week. Cole, why don't you take second stand of bases, and Josh, why don't you take the third stand? So we'll divide it up that way. In a week, let's bring it together and try to nail the subdivisions, and we'll look at this as a group of 4. And I'll try to conduct everyone through it. We'll include that as part of everyone's video. And then in your individuals, we'll have each individual line as your excerpt. So Savannah 1, Cole 2, Josh 3, Brian 4.
So 3 is the second part, depending.
Yeah, you don't come in until
3 is the top line.
Pult means
right?
stand. Right, so the...
Like 3 is this line here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty easy that way. If you need more bow, let's aim for da, 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 give or take. I think it's like 60, maybe a little bit under. It's really not that fast. If you need more bow, the key here is resonance and keeping your core sound. So if you need more bow in those beats, learn how to take it and learn where to take more bow so that you don't run out. Because you're the only thing happening in the orchestra. You get like 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. It's like a 24 bar fugue straight up. And it's just basses, right? Nobody else comes in until like rehearsal 10.
Also, I think for the later on, I think the numbers are off.
The rehearsal numbers?
Well, because you have, I think it's, because there's no 44 in the part.
Oh.
So I assume you mean 45 because it makes sense.
44?
16 before 44 is where it starts going to this, just sustaining the key, so I assume that's where you wanted it to end.
Oh, yeah, you're right, there is no 44. How about that? Let me go fix that. Yeah.
Maybe 44, maybe the number doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think it just straight up doesn't, it's one of those weird things. Yes. I'll have to check my score, that's weird. Good. So we have the ooze part at the beginning, we have the black page, the fugue, and then for some reason, Strauss, he was German after all. To him, the sort of pinnacle of human existence would have been, I don't know, Vienna in the 20s. So for Strauss, the sort of culmination of what made culture and what made the sort of ideal man was a Viennese waltz, right? That's the idea that he uses to sort of represent the height of civilization. Could it be any more arrogant? No, probably not, but it does work pretty well. Let me find that spot, and then we'll jump through. So there's a lot of other stuff to look at, particularly the stuff after 13. Not going to be covered because this whole piece could be an excerpt, right? That thing after 13, right? It's got stuff in it that's tough, but it's a little bit of a secondary spot to what's going to go on in this waltz. Let me try to find it. Yeah, we're somewhere around 30, I think. Or maybe at the end of the page before. Yeah. So where this is right before rehearsal 26. There's not too much. These pages kind of whip by. Let me see where's the... Yeah, no, we take it. Sorry. before 26. G, and da, da. Recognize that? Da, da, da. That's the sort of germ this whole piece is based off, right? E, C, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1. We're gonna get to excerpts in a minute, I promise. It's coming. 1, 2, 3. This is a little on the slow side, but nice. 'It's got, you've got syncopations, it's super buried. Unless you're sitting in the bass section in the orchestra, it's real hard to hear. It's doubled by some other stuff in the orchestra so you can pick it out, but that needs to come in there, right? Starting from that C sharp where we changed to arco, the subdivisions really have to stay locked in. 1, 2, 3. 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. 3, 1. 3, 4, 5, 6. I wouldn't do that, sorry. Right? Listen for the violin at the end, you'll be able to catch that ending. Right? That's a really nasty spot that catches people. I've seen it on audition lists for sure before. That's in there, right? 36 something, yeah, 35 to 38.
Is it possible for them to just put this whole piece on the list?
Yeah. It would be mean, but yeah, totally. Did I give you 43? Yep. So this whole thing continues. Let's look at the next piece, the next little bit right after 42. This is an intonation spot, and this is a thumb position chords spot for that stuff right at the end. I'm going to need to look at it slowly for a second, but we're going to 43. And then, hang on, I need to look. Careful of this chord, it's not a power chord, right? One of those chords is a different voicing, right? The rest of them are pretty easy, right? What is that? B flat F D, right? Our old friend 1 5 1. Right from the very beginning, bum bum bum, and from the fugue, right? That's really a big part of the underpinning of what makes this piece run. That's like the big germ is 1 5 1, and how you can change that and flip it around, right? So now it's going to give you, right, another power chord, A, E, A. Now we go into A flat, D flat, A flat. You're going to need to find a different hand position there, and it's just hard. I like thumb, thumb 2, thumb, thumb 3 kind of works, right? Right? Just be aware that that's a different chord voicing, and that you'll need a different fingering for A flat, D flat, A flat, right? It won't comply. And then after that, you're in the clear. Right? It's good, right? Let's look ahead. We've got the stuff on the last page. This is just a good one because it just feels incredible when you play this. It's a good one this is one of those things I pull out when I'm having a bad day, because it's impossible not for this to sort of be a little bit uplifting and just incredible to play. Starting at where we go to arco at the very top of the page, sehr ausdrucksvoll, very drawn out, very full of drawn outedness, right? Literally, very drawn out, very romantic. So we have, but somehow still in waltz tempo, right? So we have, right? The disgust thing comes back. One, two, oh God. This stuff coming up where you have the triple forte low E, I would close the extension to E this whole time and just. And then I would do that. You can play it on one right hand. Don't try to go for the high note. It's not worth it. You'll chip it every time. It's just too fast. Yep. Right? One. If you can get it on a down and do it that way, I would recommend that. Right? And then from that point, you're home free. But boy, does that feel good to play, right? I can just do that all day. You know, it's one of these excerpts that you don't mind practicing at all. Make sure that your intonation between F and E natural. There's a lot of shifting where you really have to jam your way up. Make sure you can really nail that. It's taken from the violin line. It's really easy to get wrong intervals up there. You'll get, if it goes sharp, if it goes flat, it's just not going to sound good. Once you get used to shifting up to that high F, you're home free. Yeah, and that will mostly cover it, right? So that's kind of the broad strokes of what makes this piece hang together. It's an incredible bass part. If you ever get a chance, once you all get extensions, if you ever get a chance to play this piece, do everything in your power to sit on the very last stand. It's one of the only pieces where sitting on the very fourth stand is the best place in the whole orchestra. Normally it's like sit in the front, it'll be better, you get better DVCs. You get a full-on solo, you get really, really good entrances. Every time I see this, I want to sit in the very back. Every single time. So if you can, switch with someone, I don't know, buy them a nice bottle of scotch, whatever you have to do, sit in the back. It's worth it. Good. All right, let's move on and do the rest of our recording so we can get the heck out of here, okay? Okay.